Ask Reddit thread. Who is spinning in their grave the hardest? Edit. I think nobody for getting us to the front page. I did this on my own. Well, at least this edit was funny. Usually they're all really obnoxious and annoying, like, oh my god, I can't believe this made it to the front page. Anyways, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Motherfucker grew to hate Sherlock Holmes and was glad to kill him off. In fact, given this quote by him, if in 100 years I am only known as the man who invented Sherlock Holmes, then I will have considered my life a failure. He's probably the world's first perpetual motion machine. Relevant. Saturday morning breakfast. Washington, D.C., early 20th century. I will not let your bill pass. Why, the founding fathers will be spinning in their graves. Precisely. Come with me. We've attached dynamos to the heads and feet of all the founders. The more they spin, the more power is generated. Americans believe their power comes from coal and oil, but they ran out decades ago. So, every time a right is violated or an illegal war is started or an unfair tax is levied, the country survives for another year. So, about that bill. Nicaragua invaded. Emergency prices in sharp decline. Energy prices in sharp decline. Nicaragua invaded. Didn't the Americans give Nicaragua guns back in like the 80s? The whole thing with... I forgot his name. American Dad had a nice song about it, though. I think the fact that the guy looks like the Smoky Man really sells this strip. Karl Marx. I saw a Gucci shop on Karl Marx Street in Russia somewhere. There's a McDonald's on the ground floor with a museum, communist in Paraguay. Well, sure, but that is intentional. Communist isn't popular in Paraguay. Prague? I think it's Prague. Well, fuck, we unintentionally built a McDonald's. Colonel Sanders. Those new commercials would make him go on a shooting rampage. That man didn't joke about chicken. I thought I heard that even before he died, they changed the chicken recipe and he hated it. He tried to get it changed back several times. You're thinking of the gravy. He was extremely particular about the gravy preparation, and when they bought him out and started franchising, they abandoned his gravy prep because it was too complicated a process. And apparently it did piss him off big time. Yeah, the original gravy required using grease from the fried chicken as well. The little fried bits of batter left over from frying. It's quite a work to make crackling gravy, so they tossed it for easier stuff. They still have pretty good gravy, though. Steve Irwin. He taught everyone, no matter how scary or weird, all animals are our friends. He made tarantulas look like puppy dogs, rattlesnakes look like your friendly neighborhood resident, and now Animal Planet. His kingdom has gone to shit. Those shows invoke fear of misunderstood creatures or don't even teach about animals at all. Animal Planet sickens me now. Animal Planet? You mean People Planet with some animals? Same thing with the History Channel. Now it's aliens and other bullshit we're calling History Channel. I was so disappointed that Animal Planet sold out. That was the only thing I watched. Same here, that and Discovery. At least Discovery has turned around back to science. Except Shark Week is still a giant pile of trash. My 7-year-old niece was watching it this year and I was appalled at what they were considering educational. Franz Kafka. He wanted Max Brod to destroy all of his unpublished work, but instead, Brod published it all. Talk about a good friend, eh? I have no idea who this guy is. Probably all these artists who died lonely and poor as fuck with no appreciation or love, and now their creations are being sold in millions by others. Cough. Vincent van Gogh. Cough. He'd appreciate Starry, Starry Night umbrella. The Doctor Who episode where he visits Van Gogh explores what it would mean for someone to find out that in the future they'd be appreciated. Worth a look if you haven't seen it. Lenin. Ever since Stalin took over, he never stopped spinning cents. Even his wish about a private funeral next to his family was denied in the most spectacular fashion by publicly displaying him instead, not to mention the complete political change of course. Andrew Jackson. He spent his presidency getting rid of previous private central bank, the second bank of the United States, which he deemed a den of vipers, only to have another reappear in 1913 and put his face on the $20 Federal Reserve note as a poetic fuck you. He's also about the friendly relation with the UK and the fact Indians haven't been wiped off the face of the USA yet. He'd also about the relation with the UK and the fact Indians haven't been wiped off the face of the United States yet. Okay, I got it. What he meant to say was he'd also roll because about the friendly relations. This isn't what everyone else is really submitting, but my grandpa. He never really liked my uncle because he was a bit of a screw-up and disrespectful and selfish. All true things. My uncle lost his house and moved in with my grandma. My grandma is 91, her house is spotless. He has moved in and trashed it. He treats her like a dumb old lady and drives my grandpa's classic car. I often say I have proof that ghosts don't exist, because if they did, my grandpa would be haunting the crap out of my uncle. Oh, there's no way I can pronounce that. He is known as the godfather of fascism and linked to Nazism, when his actual philosophy was counter so much so that those ideologies stood for. His core idea is the power of individual to make his/her own destiny, which runs completely counter to totalitarian regime's main goal of controlling their people. This is mostly his asshole sister's fault. Why? What did she do to cause this? She edited his work and was a huge Nazi. So when she released posthumous editions, she put in pro-Nazi notes and such. Wow, that's long. George Washington. No political parties. No entangling alliances. Ha. Ha ha. Yeah, add about every founding father to the list. For better or worse, America today is not what they envisioned at all. To be fair, I don't think they ever envisioned America one day being more powerful than the British Empire either. Who let out the slaves? The British Empire at the time was a lot less impressive than it would later become. Historically, it's normally broken up into the First Empire and Second Empire. Losing America is generally seen as the end of the First Empire, and the event that spurred Britain to look elsewhere to build a new one. Really, the USA and Britain were growing in similar ways at the same time. While the USA wasn't very established, it was reasonable to expect it would be rough equal to the First Empire Britain in shortish order, with more land and a similar order of magnitude population. What they wouldn't have expected was the ridiculous ascendancy of both countries that happened later, the Second Empire in the 19th century and the superpower USA in the 20th. Gary Gygax. He's rolling in his grave. Who is this guy? When I went to the Geneva Lake Museum in Lake Geneva, they acted like I was nuts when I asked about Mr. Gygax. You know, only your town's largest cultural export of all time. I still don't know who that is. Probably my mom. She told me on her deathbed not to let my dad marry that bitch Norma. So yeah, my dad is married to Norma now. Disclaimer, she's not a bitch, she's really lovely. She dated my dad for a minute in high school before my mom. Then he and mom were married 36 years. Mom died of cancer. Norma then found him on Facebook months later. I was pretty torn about it. My mom would fucking kill me and my dad if she was here right now. Edit. When my mom said that, it was kind of a joke, although she was on her deathbed. She knew my dad hadn't talked Norma in decades. After my mom died, I stayed with my dad, only child not married, for a couple of months. We were both devastated. We're very close. After I went back home, I didn't want my dad to be alone, so I suggested he get on Facebook and try to find some old friends. That's when she appeared. She probably looked for him every day before that. LOL, but it's cool. He's happy and she's not horrible, and that's all that matters. This is now my best comm today. Glad it's about... Oh my god. Henry Ford, the current CEO of his company, is Jewish. Henry Ford was a Nazi sympathizer. He was pen pals with Hitler. Mustafa Artakur Kemal has to be up there, the founder of the Republic of Turkey. He worked all his days as hard as possible to create a modern, secular, educated Turkey. He did incredible things, but sadly he died quite young. Read his Wikipedia page. You'll be shocked and amazed at how many reforms, rules, and initiatives he managed to complete, yet he wanted to do so much more. Ever since he died, one after another idiot politicians, more corrupt and moronic than the last, has slowly turned back time. Less education, more narrow-mindedness. Politicians in Turkey now use "but God commands you" as a get-out-of-jail card every single time. It's such a shame because Turkey is an amazing country. It's large and varied with many natural resources, so much potential. If Turkey had continued the path Ataturk paved, it would probably be one of the most powerful nations in the world. Even today, every shop, restaurant, hotel, etc. has a big image of Ataturk on the wall. Every Turkish bill has his portrait. Nearly everyone adores him, but they realize a man like him will probably never be again. He wrote a beautiful message about Australia and New Zealand troops that died in the Battle of Gallipoli. It's particularly poignant when you know that he played a large part in the Turkish defense. I always had a lot of respect for that, and also for the friendship and mutual respect for the countries formed with the ashes of battle. This week, Adolf Hitler. German volunteers are literally lining up at a train station in Munich to welcome refugees to clothes, food, and other supplies before being housed in kind civilian homes. Oh man, he would have shot himself if he saw that happening. Oh, that picture took place in Germany? I remember seeing it on the front page of Reddit a couple days ago, or maybe yesterday. Probably Mao, looking at how capitalism China is nowadays. Good, let him spin. Actually, not in a grave. He was embalmed and put in a museum. If you go to Beijing, you can visit it and see if he's spinning. But I'd say that China has intendedly distanced itself pretty far from him by now, so I don't really think he's turning. More sulking disappointingly, like an old closet racist grandpa that watches his children and grandchildren donates money to third world countries. But I'd say that China has intently distanced itself pretty far from him. LOL, no. No, 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 no. The youth in China referred to him affectionately as Grandpa Mao. His face is on every denomination of paper money. A movie just came out a few weeks ago about him being heroic during World War II. He was revived as a hero in China who began the process that made China the world contender that it is today. Source, live in China. Don't fuck with Grandpa Mao. While that's true, most of his philosophies have been overturned almost immediately after his death. Yes, of course. I've spoken to old people who lived through all those years. It was shit. Eating grass, watching other people waste away. It was terrible. The official thing the government says now is that Mao was 70% right, 30% wrong. Which is basically an admission that he's totally wrong, except you can't say the founding father of your country is wrong. Deng rounded up the gang of 4 right after Mao died, and have publicly called the Cultural Revolution a 10-year catastrophe. That's a pretty compelling admission of wrongness. Everyone despises the Cultural Revolution. Everyone loves Mao. Wasn't the Cultural Revolution in China the one where a whole bunch of stuff went wrong and a lot of people died? I think one of them was like, I don't remember, killing all the crows and they got infested by insects. Che Guevara. Wouldn't you like corporations selling your face on t-shirts? Probably a slightly controversial answer, but the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, his vision was for a Muslim-populated secular country that protected its minorities. It's basically the absolute opposite. This kind of reminds me of when my dad showed me a picture of my great-grandfather. I'd never seen a picture of him before, and he never got to see me since he was too old to travel when I was born. I heard stories about him, like how he enlisted during the First World War as a private, and due to the rate of attrition, he was a lieutenant by the time the war was over. By the time the Second War started, he was colonel in the Royal Air Force in charge of anti-air battery. My dad then told me about his tobacco shop he owned after the war, and that a few years ago, the new owner of it, the Pakistani guy, had found this old ledger of the shop's inventory for my great-grandfather, which I thought was kind of cool. Then I asked what his grandfather would think of a Pakistani guy running his smoke shop. My dad said, he would think hell had frozen over. Alright, that was a really long one for not really that much of a punchline, I guess. Rosalind Franklin. Using her X-ray crystallograph results, Watson and Crick managed to figure out the double helical structure for DNA. Franklin was never commended for her input and eventually died from bathing in X-ray radiations. Sam Walton. He loved his store and his employees and ideals. It was run much different under him. Non-24 hours, closed holidays. Dude would walk into a store now, see poop in the urinals, and just like, where did we go? Is Sam Walton the guy who made Walmart? I don't think it is. Oh god, you're spot on. My 6-year-old stint began a year before he passed. Not even a year after he died, the Pride in USA signs came down. Stores started going 24 hours. The culture was totally different. His kids quit having grassroots and store meetings. You see fat people in motorized cars and cashiers eating hamburgers while working. Is it? He'd also be one of the richest men in the entire world. Can't imagine he'd be too upset. I think this is the guy who made Walmart. Yeah. The guy died in 92. Walmart, for all intents and purposes, is not all that dissimilar from Walmart 92. Other than the weird font change and their stores being quite a bit cleaner and better laid out. He'd probably stand up and applaud the continual logistical improvements they've made, in fact. I remember reading about the founder. He pretty much turned Walmart into what it is. It's not really all that much different from what he's done with it. Since he's the one who like pretty much made it an industry practice of buying in bulk and selling cheaper than everyone else. And selling like everything in one store. Thomas Jefferson. He would be appalled at what the federal government has become. I predict future happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them. I sincerely believe that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, and the principle of spending money to be paid by prosperity, under the name of funding, is but swindling futurity on a large scale. The legitimate powers of government extend to such acts only as injurious to others. It does me no injury for my neighbor to say there are 20 gods or no god. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my legs. Nikola Tesla. Though he alertates which way he's spinning frequently. Oh, alternates. Holy shit. Yep, to keep up on that one, probably would have just been, well, Nikola Tesla, but it's all good. He's holding a magnet and there's a coil of water around his casket. Dr. Seuss. It's pretty self-explanatory if you saw the Cat in the Hat movie. Matched the book pretty well, I'd say. The book had at least 2 hours of content, so I'm glad they fit it all in. Dwight D. Eisenhower. We have become the military-industrial complex he warned we would become. To those implying I misunderstood or was misinformed by another interpretation of Eisenhower's farewell speech, I don't think so. He spoke of military. I don't want to read that. I don't even know who that is. Sounds familiar, though. Ike Turner. He'd be insanely jealous that Chris Brown is the hottest star in R&B while he got blacklisted for less. Chris Brown's career is nothing like it was before his domestic violence incidents. Ike's career went to complete shit, but Chris is far from being the most popular R&B singer. Kebab shop owners who insist on being buried with their equipment. Kebab is what the British call griots. Why have abs when you can have kebabs? Wade Boggs, always trying to get the Duke boys. John Kennedy Toole. He killed himself after his novel A Confederacy of Dunce had been repeatedly rejected by publishers. 10 years after his suicide, his mother finally gets the book published. It sells millions of copies, gets translated 18 languages, and Toole posthumously wins the Pulitzer Prize. Oh, wow, that's sad. Sounds like he was vindicted, not reeling in his grave. I don't get the draw of the novel. I know that I'm missing something because of the Pulitzer, etc. It was because I had to read it for class, a Don Quixote class. I just couldn't get the Ignatius. Don Quixote. Jesus and Muhammad. What the shit did we do? Didn't Jesus get out of the grave? My dad is going to be so mad at you guys, I'm not even kidding. Shakespeare. Romeo and Juliet is not a love story to aspire to. I don't know. I think a playwright whose work is not only still famous but widely regarded as the pinnacle of the art some 500 years after his death would be pretty satisfied with how things turned out. Agree. And seeing his plays performed not once, not twice, but probably thousands of times every year around the friggin' globe by anyone ranging from pimply high school drama students to the most talented actors in the world, witnessing how deep an impact his work has had on so many generations of people. I mean, whoa, it just blows my mind to imagine that. George Orwell. If George Orwell could see the CCTV network they set up in London, you could harness enough energy from his spinning corpse to power the entire city. At least enough energy to power the CCTV network. What's the CCTV network? Is that like a thing that watches everyone? Mostly from people applying the term Orwellian to everything and everything that could possibly relate it to surveillance, authoritarianism, or privacy infringement. Death of the author. 451 is not about censorship. Broadway is just hated television. Bob Ross did his shows for free to help and teach people. Now his videos are being sold for an astonishing high price. Can't imagine that man being angry about anything, but I can't imagine he'd be impressed. I believe everything went up on YouTube recently. Who's Bob Ross? These people never actually talk about who the hell this guy was. Oh, the painting guy. I used to watch him on PBS. William Wallace. Scotland last year was able to vote for the independence from the UK and voted to remain with them. Oh, yeah. As a Scot, I am endlessly entertained by the fact that William Wallace and Robert the Bruce are the only famous Scottish leaders, and sometimes the only famous Scottish people, period, that anyone knows. Even in his time, their freedom would be that Scottish nobility that already was interbred with English nobility would get to stay bosses over Scotland, rousing the people to be serfs and subject to their local lords rather than not giving a fuck about who they slave for. But that's not what I saw in Braveheart. Let's see. Kurt Cobain, 13-year-olds buy Nirvana tees from pop stores because they're rad. He's fucking rolling like a river, that coffin. Add to the fact that there are teens wearing t-shirts with his suicide note on it. What? Holy shit. That's messed up. Gandhi dies. Nation tears itself apart in race hate. Nation was already torn apart in race hate before he died. The guy that invented the wheel. Meek Mill, J.R.R. Tolkien, from all the terrible fan fiction the world has to suffer based on his work. Just wait until GRM dies without completing the series. No, you shut up. Thomas Riddle, the guy whose grave is Edinburgh, supposedly inspired Voldemort's name for J.K. Rowling. Whose grave in Edinburgh? Oh, Hitler. Okay. Really bad at reading names, so forgive all of the terrible pronunciation I did in this one.